Welcome again to another NZ Aviation Podcast. Paul Brennan in the bunker in Auckland. And where are you, Martin? Same place?
Right. If you look behind me, you can see the sun's going down.
Yep.
And here's my studio.
The good old back of the old ute.
Yeah.
Nice.
Got the load lights on.
That's all you need. So you got a nice little backdrop there with the sun, the last rays of the sun, and something rising in the background. And
I think it's a street lamp rising.
And you got your studio lights there, all working.
There you go.
My background here is the screen, is the 737-7 MAX coming into land after activity over the weekend with the FAA and recertification, all that sort of stuff. They say they're going to do a few more flights, but one would imagine they got most stuff out of the way on that flight, wouldn't you say?
Oh, I mean, they're going to have to do a lot of flights. I guess these early flights are all just about confirming the data and gathering as much data as possible, eh? It's still going to be a couple of months before the thing's let back into service. They've got to tick off all the boxes now, and that's going to take a while, I reckon.
So more time. So you're sticking with August? Well, it's probably going to be August into almost mid-July.
Or September. And then they got the issue, who wants it?
Well, let's jump straight into that, because you sent me a message to a link to a story, a message, and I did a double take on the number. Norwegian rejecting 92, I think, MAX orders and 5 787 orders, and they're going to sue Boeing as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
92. Crikey.
Yeah. So all up, it's over 400 now, cancellations on that program.
Right.
Mm.
How many have been produced? That's about the backlog in car parks, isn't it?
Probably, yeah. And there's going to be deferrals on top of that, and it's a mess.
I wonder what they would do, because we've talked about this before. There's a line of thinking that they go, they're recycled somehow. The aircraft that have or can't find homes, or would you just store them and let attrition do its thing, or offer one-for-one swap overs with current next-gen fleets? I mean, what do you do in a situation like that?
Yeah, what do you do, and how do you stop it happening next time? Because the previous CEO, the one that just got replaced, he was saying Boeing's not going to do any more moonshots, but it's precisely moonshots that put them where they are today. And if they don't do bold, relatively risky projects, they're not going to get anywhere, because staying conservative has exposed them to more risk than anything else, because the wrong people are in charge, I suspect. I was looking back at successful Boeing projects, and basically the last one was the 777. That went from starting the design to introduction into service in about 6 or 7 years, depending on the dates you choose. 6 to 7 years, and by all accounts, it was pretty successful, right?
It was computer drawn too. It was the first one, wasn't it? And that seemed to go quite
first one completely, and it was also the first plane that didn't require changes once it had been built, because the things fit together so well. So that was the 777. Then they had the 787, which was, no matter how you paint it, it's a good plane now, but it was a disaster.
Yeah.
Then you had the 747, which should have been easy, which almost was as big a disaster. It cost them $1 billion more than anticipated, took at least a year longer. For the first year and a half or so, it couldn't use the tail tank, so it couldn't deliver the range. That was a disaster. And that was all due to project management. It had nothing to do with engineering. The tail tank issue was a problem. That maybe was an engineering problem. That was flutter. They think that when the fuel tank was full with the new wing, it caused flutter. So they had to strengthen the fuse pins on the wing body joint and all that type of thing, which added quite a lot of weight to the airplane. But the main issue with the 747-8 was the fact that the new bits were all designed using the computers. The old bits used the old drawings, and they hadn't allowed for the sort of tolerance creep in the old tooling. So when it came to fit the new wings to the aircraft, they didn't fit. Lots of stuff didn't fit.
Yeah.
And they'd captured a lot of the tolerance creep, but they hadn't got enough of it, and that's what caused the delay. And then you went from the 747, the new middle market aircraft. Are they going to do it? Are they not going to do it? Are they going to do it? Are they not going to do it? 737 MAX, a disaster actually. And even the 767, the tanker, they don't seem to be able to get that thing sorted. So Boeing needs a moonshot, and it needs to sort of recalibrate the whole organization. They need to start doing new stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the big stories of the last week is that I think 12 748 freighters to go, and then that's it. The 737 MAX, surely that still carries a negative in its branding with the flying public. People have had that story coming at them for quite a few years now. It's been, the double down, pile on bad publicity. Surely at some point they're going to have to rebrand that aircraft and get the MAX part of it, maybe even the 737 part of it, out of the title. 737 is so iconic, but that's definitely the MAX bit, maybe.
It's too late. I think they've left it too long. They should have done that straight up and maybe made bigger changes to it, but they're not gonna. They're going to try and milk it for all it's worth and scurry off and try and come up with something warm or better. That if the only thing they can come up with is a warmed over 767-400 to compete with the A330, they've got bigger problems. Because while that might be a fine aircraft, I think it's a bit silly. It's not worthy of Boeing.
Speaking of Airbus, I see the story in one of the British papers that it took authorities about a year to work out there was a bribery going on at Airbus, and one of the big bribes was 17 mil allegedly to the wife of the head of Sri Lankan Airlines if they would buy Airbus aircraft.
Yeah,
that's a reasonable amount if it's true.
It's a fair wedge, isn't it?
Yeah.
It must be pretty common. They're probably all doing it in one way or the other.
Yeah. Have you been following any more about the Pakistani pilot scandal? There was a bit of talk in the last week that maybe some of those licenses that were thought to be bogus were just bad administration. I don't know about that, but I mean, Europe stopped them, and they haven't said, "Oh, okay, we got that wrong" yet, have they?
No, and the numbers keeps going up now. Now the head of the Civil Aviation Authority in Pakistan says there's problems with 40% of all the licenses.
Wow, 40. 40. Incredible. Let's look at some news stories. Start here at home, here in New Zealand. I pulled a few up here. And confusion for stranded New Zealanders in Australia as no Air New Zealand flights appear available until the end of July. Air New Zealand's website shows no available flights from Australian cities such as Brisbane, Adelaide, Canberra or Sydney to Auckland until late July.
Yeah, so they've cut too much capacity.
Wow. But these are the closest international cities that we've forever had relationships with. And they're not flying there till the end of July.
Well, they are flying, but they're not just flying enough.
Well, it says no available flights, so they're already all booked out.
Yeah, they're all booked out.
Ah, right.
So there's more demand than they anticipated.
Okay, I'm just but there are not many flights, are there? That's the thing. They haven't
one a day.
Really?
Yeah.
How could that be?
I think there's one a day to the major centres, and I think Adelaide's like 2 a week or something like that. I can check, but yeah, there's just not enough capacity.
They should go every day, whether it's empty or not.
Well, they do go every day, but there's only one a day.
Yeah, but that guarantees a full penny pinching.
Yeah.
There must be.
No,
I don't think New Zealanders are going to forget this too much. I think there's been a bit of, first of all with the no refunds, which I guess was legally within their power to do, but it was a terrible disaster for PR.
Not a good look, hey?
Yeah, and with everything else going on, they're going to have to do some work there. So the other carriers get all the business.
Well, I guess they are, yeah. There's just not that many flights a day anyway. I mean, everyone's back right off.
Yeah, well, It says here, well, they're doing cargo-only flights at the moment, it says here. Staff spoke to people online in similar situations, said they'd booked tickets on other websites such as Skyscanner only to have their bookings cancelled at the last minute. Others had their Air New Zealand bookings changed and were unsure if they are able to fly home. Air New Zealand has been contacted for comment. Sounds a bit loosey-goosey to me.
Yeah.
Oh, well, now, on the matter of Virgin Australia, large owners of Virgin Australia's unsecured bonds have launched an extraordinary intervention to derail the bankrupt airline's sale to Bain Capital and allow creditors to vote on their alternative plan for the company. All right.
They've just announced they're going to get rid of 6,000 people as well.
Really? 6,000? Yeah. That's
well,
half.
They're doing the same as what Qantas has done, right?
Man, okay. Well, yeah. Well, we saw that coming, but I didn't know that or realize that they'd announced that. What, in the last short time? Was it today?
Yeah. Well, I think it was over the weekend that came out.
Right.
Quite news day, you know.
Is that what Bain Capital will do?
Yeah.
Or is that what the airline's going to do anyway?
Well, that's obviously
Bain Capital.
Bain Capital's in control of it, so yeah, that's what they want to do.
And Qantas announces massive flight sale, 350,000 fares up for sale, and some of the prices around Australia. Sydney to Darwin, $200. Brisbane to Sydney, 115. Hobart to Melbourne, 125. In that sort of ballpark.
Yeah, there's loads of cheap flights going at the moment. Yeah, although this whole Victoria thing's put a bit of a spanner in the works, eh?
What do you think about that? They've locked down, I think, some tower blocks in some of the suburbs of Melbourne, as well as locking, or I think, I don't know if it's strict lockdown, but limiting the movement of people in 30 suburbs. One thing.
But more now. More.
Was it?
Yeah.
Closed the border.
It was 36 suburbs, and now it's gone out. They added a few more. I think today, I was speaking to a guy down in Melbourne. But I mean, you know, those tower blocks, that's exactly where, you know, it's all very well being smug and saying, well, Australia handled better than everybody else. But it's interesting that it came back and bit them in the tower blocks, because that's exactly what the European, you know, very high density accommodation with people who weren't necessarily following the advice of the health department, and the fact that they're now saying, oh well, it's kind of our fault that they don't speak English. Well, how can, you know? Well, let's not even go there.
I want to hear about the death rate, though. I can endlessly hear about the number of infections, and kind of Trump makes an interesting point where he says, well, the more you test, the more you find. It's actually a fact. And if you're really efficient at testing, you can find many more cases. But I want to hear about the death rate.
Well, the mistake Trump makes is he makes out that that's a bad thing to find out that more people have it. It's a good thing to find out that more people have it. Then
I think he was joking by saying it. You know, it's sort of like it makes me look bad as a joke, an ironic joke. Let's not forget a sense of humor here. But I want to hear about the deaths because rolling your eyes. Because that's really what counts. You can have many people having it if they're not too badly affected. That's one thing. But if heaps of people are dying, well, that's another thing. And I want to know about that. And that tells you how bad it is.
And the death rate essentially hasn't changed. And there's that epidemiologist who's coming under all sorts of flack now. That guy Levitt, who basically forecast the death rate right at the beginning, and his numbers still hold up. And that's very interesting. And his whole, and he is an epidemiologist. He's at Stanford University, so he is an expert, and it seems to be quite a credible one. He called it early, and he said, you know, social distancing and everything's important, but the shutdown, it's too late. You've missed it, because it's been out here. So the very fact that we've got these curves rising as fast as they were rising, or still are rising, he says that's it's too late. It's out there.
Yeah.
So of course, practice social distancing to a reasonable extent. Wear masks, for God's sake. Wear masks.
Yeah. Well, That's 101, isn't it? I mean, it's obvious how that could work.
And if you feel ill, go to the doctor.
Yeah, well, of course, people are going to the doctor at the slightest snuffle now because everyone's so hyper aware. I guess that'll pass in time.
Except in America, a lot of people can't afford to go to the doctor. And then there's all these people, and they say one of the big troubles here in Melbourne, a lot of these people these community transmissions are on 0 hours contracts. So if they don't go to work, they don't get paid, and they don't get the benefit. They don't get the JobKeeper allowance. So they're going to work, because if they don't go to work, they've got no money.
No incentive to stay home at all.
None. And I mean, that's what was happening in the care homes. You know, people were going to work because they're on 0 hour contracts. They need the money to pay their rent.
Boy, that's getting bitten on the bum, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's in Australia. So you imagine what it's like in the States.
Well, a lot of the spreading happened in care homes. So
yeah,
and of course, back to the death rate. That's where the high death rate is. I want to know about the death rate. It's not being reported. We keep getting all these cases. It's very alarmist. You know,
yes,
150 overnight. Yeah, wow, okay. Probably 150, 200 caught the flu overnight too. But I want to know how badly they end up.
Yeah, do they die? And it doesn't appear that they are, because the
even
infection.
If they get seriously ill, you know, do they have to go on a respirator? Is it a near, close shave thing, or what?
So yeah, and the figures seem to be showing that the infection rate is going up, especially as there's this second strain, which is as dangerous or not, or slightly less dangerous, but it's 6 to 9 times more infectious.
Well, good luck with that. It's interesting here. The new National Party leader suggested just before the weekend that maybe it was time to think about, I think he said think about how we're going to open up the border, because the social life of New Zealand, the social well-being of New Zealand, and the economic well-being of New Zealand is directly threatened. And it's hard to argue against that, given the tourism industry has such it plays a big part in our foreign exchange earning. He was absolutely pilloried. Like, this guy's insane. The next day, Helen Clark, Rob Fife, and Sir Peter Gluckman say the same thing in an open letter, and no one criticizes it.
Yeah. And Jacinda, the next day, says, oh, we're definitely thinking about the Trans-Tasman travel bubble, and it's definitely on the horizon, and we're just looking for the best time to start doing something. Yeah, I caught that as well. I thought that was interesting.
So it depends. It's not the message. It's who's saying it. Everything's based on emotional response at the moment. And it's so obvious to see. It's just the way it is. I get it. I understand why these things happen. But that was an interesting thing. But there does seem to be some thinking. What are you going to do? Show me a kangaroo or something?
No, I don't know if this camera will pick it up, but I'm going to turn around. Can you see something? You see something orange there on the horizon?
Kind of, yeah.
There's a huge full moon coming up.
Oh yeah, right. Well, I could see it in Auckland earlier this evening. Yeah. Now
I'll wait until it comes up more, and I'll swing around again.
Yeah. I saw it tonight. It was very impressive, very bright. Actually, you might not even need the lights on the back of the back of the ute seat. But anyway, but at least people are starting to realize now that you've got to open up this border and keep the whole thing going. But like the situation in Victoria, this could end up being like a yo-yo. You know, just as you open it up now, again, that's why I go back. What's the death rate? You can have all the infections in the world, but if it's not killing people and making them seriously ill, well, meh.
Well, and that's what people are saying. You know, they might come up with an inoculation that might be a bit like a seasonal inoculation, like flu, and it might help you or it might not. But you know, some epidemiologists are sort of saying, well, maybe it's going to be around for the next 10, 15 years, and it's going to wax and wane, and we're just going to have to live with it and move on. I see they're shutting down large chunks of Spain again. Well, not 70,000 people here in a city, 140,000 people in another city. My sister lives in just outside London, and she says it's ridiculous because all the shops have got social distancing in the shop, so you're not allowed into the shop. But the town's got a narrow little high street where all the shops are off the high street, right? And she says on a Saturday morning, there's thousands of people milling around on the high street waiting to get into the shops. And
Yeah.
you know, but you can go into a B&Q or a Bunnings, similar, or you can go into the supermarket. Oh, there's no restriction. Off you go. In you go. Except one supermarket, Waitrose, they have a you're not allowed in until someone comes out policy. But the local Sainsbury's, the local Aldi doesn't have that. B&Q doesn't have that. And yet the shops all down the high street, they have to follow that policy. And now if you go into a shop and try some clothes on, they're not allowed to put it back on the shelves for 72 hours. It's got to be
Crikey.
Yeah.
This is getting
She's a bit like me in as much. I don't mind what you do, but be consistent.
well. At some point, something's got to give big time. You just can't keep going like that. I wonder how long the people of Victoria or Melbourne. I mean, fancy closing the border between states.
Oh yeah, I mean that's been going on now for months. So yeah.
Oh, okay, well, it's been reported as
No, they've just reclosed it. They're just
reclosing.
New
Yeah.
South Wales, I think, in South Australia have just reclosed the border to Victoria. I mean, they only opened the border, the Queensland border. No, they only opened the internal borders in Queensland 4 weeks ago. Up until then, if you wanted to go further out west, they had police patrols at Windora, and between Windora and Birdsville, they had the army.
The army
stopping people going over to South Australia and the territory.
Speaking of the military in Australia, huh?
Truckers could go. They could drive anywhere.
Oh, right. Yeah, well, you need the food. You need the alcohol.
But that's, again, it's not consistent.
No, I know. Speaking of military, boy, Aussies are spending big money in the next 10 years on their military, like $270 billion or something.
Yeah, so they'll get about 100 F-35s for that.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But obviously, I've seen it headlined as looking for the ability to strike harder from further away. Basically, that's what they're looking at.
Yes. So they're going to have to buy, and we all know what they're going to have to buy, Su-35s and Su-30s. That's what they're going to have to buy, and that side-by-side Sukhoi, I think it's the 32. That's what they need to get, because they're the best looking plane out there.
They won't, though.
Yeah. No, they'll get F-35.
Yeah, but that's a big commitment. So, well, is that something that was planned, or has that just come about in recent times? Because it seems that China's been maybe a little belligerent towards Australia.
Well, that's exactly what. Yeah, that's using the excuse of China to spend for a military welfare program to try and pump some more money into the economy. And hey, good on them. It's an idea. Go for it.
What if there's a major exodus out of Hong Kong? What does that mean for Cathay Pacific and any airline operating out of that city?
Be interesting to see how many people take up. I've read a few interesting things about that. I mean, England. I mean, around 1997, there were a lot of people saying that would have been a very good idea to have given them British citizenship right then and encourage them to come to England. So England has offered it again, or the UK has offered it again, and now Australia.
And so they should. Absolutely. They should.
And Australia and Canada will probably jump on the bandwagon. If I was a cynic, I would say that was announced in reaction to the fact that they've heard that their foreign student figures are going to be at least 50% down this year.
Yeah, that's one way of addressing
it. And the reasons are interesting. The reasons are, the Chinese government is encouraging people not to study in Australia and New Zealand, right? But also they're
actively discouraging them?
They're actively doing it. Yeah. There's also not and there were like 15 categories. You know, they polled 1,200 Chinese students and asked them a whole series of questions, and they broke it down to 15 categories. And the highest ranking categories were, and this wasn't the highest, but it was quite high, that the Chinese government on social media is encouraging, is saying you shouldn't, and for the following reasons: racism, victimization. But another reason that when they asked the students themselves, why are you considering not studying in Australia and New Zealand? They said, the degrees aren't worth much anymore in the local job market. It's basically, you've got to have a degree from a UK university or an American university or a Canadian university, but Australia and New Zealand degrees aren't really that interesting to us anymore.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe it was only so good for so long, but That
way of
would
the world,
replace
isn't
then the students, right? If we took them in from, and I don't think there's been any comment by the New Zealand government as to what we would be prepared to do. We seem to be always talking, it's always being talked about, how we're not very good with the number of immigrants we take in. Well, I mean, there seems to be a real need developing here. What's the average wealth? What's the wealth of the average Hong Kong citizen? How much money does the average
I
Hong
don't.
Kong citizen earn, and how much would they have?
But the Googles can tell me.
Yeah,
I'll have a
that'd be
look.
interesting, because you would want the ones who had the bucks, wouldn't
Yeah,
you?
but of course, yeah, but the ones with the bucks aren't the ones you're going to get because they've already got flats in London, Toronto, New York.
Well, I mean the ones over 100K.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Maybe, yeah.
well, carry on. I'll look for this because you can see me, right?
Yeah, again, I can see you doing that. So, yeah, because there's a lot of up to 3 million potentially. I think that's about just under half the population of Hong Kong.
Yeah, that would be a bit of a shocker, right?
That would be a huge exodus, man.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and surely Cathay Pacific would have to downsize massively, because there wouldn't be the same
Yeah.
freedom of travel either, would there? Also, I've noticed creeping into some of the airliners .net pictures that Chinese sort of 717 knockoff is starting to appear in China Southern colors. They're wheeling it out to the gates now, so you can see what's happening there.
Yes. It's yeah. Hang on, let me just I'll read you the numbers now. It's quite interesting actually. It's quite
All right.
interesting. So these are per capita GDP figures. So they're not necessarily, well, they're definitely not income, but the price for PPP, that is purchasing power parity. The per capita GDP in Hong Kong is 64,928, and the PPP per capita in New Zealand is 40,266.
So they're wealthier.
So basically, are significantly wealthier. The nominals, there's not such a big difference. It's only about 10 grand's difference. But yeah, so your average in Hong Kong, they are potentially wealthier than your average New Zealander. But of course, there was some talk years ago, and it never went anywhere, where some bright spark was saying, and this was right around the time when the UK gave up Hong Kong and the surrounding territories, and that was make Darwin a special economic zone and get as many of the Hong Kong citizens to move to Darwin as possible and set up a Hong Kong. On the
Wow.
sort of, yeah,
That's
because
very experimental.
you need to keep the people in the region because they've got all the business contacts and the business connections and all this type of thing. I mean, a lot of them might go to England. A lot of them might get British citizenship. I don't think many would stay there. And I don't think many would stay in Australia because it's not, the business environment's just unless
But
you've got a
doing
critical
business with
mass,
the
3
mainland
billion.
mainly? Aren't they doing business
Sorry?
with the mainland China anyway?
Yeah.
That might be problematic for a lot of people because the Chinese are probably taking names, right?
Well, they're definitely taking names. Yeah. Now let's see if you can see that moon. I'll get out of the light.
This is
It's pretty
Martin doing some
spectacular.
Martin doing some mooning.
I don't think you'll see it.
Didn't hear it. Oh yeah, I can see it. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't fill the sky, but I can see it.
It's pretty big. Anyway.
Not bad. A big Aussie moon, mate. Big Aussie moon.
Big red moon.
Going to get into our aircraft of the week and it's the request of Jason Toy, who's one of our Patreons. Martin, a very faithful listener from a long time ago, now viewer, and he obviously knows that you've always been a fan, and I am a fan of that beautiful Pilatus Pc-12. So we're going to talk about that shortly. I got it up here on the media player at the moment. Very capable aircraft. We'll talk about that. I'm going to throw in an update about Bring Our Birds Home. It looks like things are going well. never any certainty in this game, but all I can say is we're moving in on that 737, and we're just going through some motions at the moment. So hopefully some good news. Still locked down in Manaus in Brazil. They've been hit hard by COVID-19. I know that from talking to the folks on the ground there. Again, it's hard to know how many people have died there, but a lot of people have been infected with it, and of course they live very densely. So the DC-8 sits there, and the Brazilian legal system opens up at the end of July, and we're going to be then having another go in fact, continuing our go at having a judge sign off a piece of paper that says, yeah, take this old bit of junk away. So that's the update there. A couple of other things that just are worth a mention. I've heard that there are quite a few dozen helicopters for sale in the South Island, Martin, mainly Squirrel helicopters, possibly over 50. Again, a consequence of the tourism shutdown. So, I mean, that could only be a fire sale, couldn't it?
Yeah, you got to feel sorry for those guys, and you can't, and they're going to be hard to buy them back, isn't it?
I'd say. Yep, it's going to be hard to get them back in. Who in the country would buy them?
Yeah. Well, no, I know. I mean, that's going to be the problem. They're going to be sent overseas.
Yeah, just think of all the people that support them in terms of engineering, maintenance, obviously operations, flying. That's a lot of that's hundreds of people.
Yes.
We had an AN-124 into Auckland the other night.
Oh, what was it delivering?
Don't know, didn't see, but it was just sort of in and out. They call it Soviet era cargo plane. I don't quite know if you can. It was right at the end of the Soviet era. If it was at all in the Soviet era, if it was right at the end. I mean, the IL-76 would be a Soviet era freighter, or the AN, what is it, the 12 or the 24 or something?
You didn't see it go over, did you?
No, I just saw some pictures. Someone got some pictures. I might have heard it. I heard a big airliner flying over. Around about 6:30 the other night. Maybe that was it. It's it's rare to hear a plane fly.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
And poor old Rocket Lab launched off the Mahia Peninsula, I think, on Sunday. And I watched the launch. They got up to the first stage detaching and the secondary stage firing. And then about 3 or 4 minutes after that, they lost the second stage with the 7 little satellites. One of the satellites was a Canon product, which could zoom up to things on the surface to a scale of 90 centimeters. And they were going to use that to capture every single part of the landmass of the Earth.
Yeah, it's a pity, eh?
I mean, I guess insurance pays, right?
Yes, and they often build 2 satellites. While they're making one, they make the other. So,
in case
they'll have another crack, and these will be relatively cheap satellites because it's a little rocket.
Yeah, a bit of a blow, but.
Yeah. These things happen, and they've done really, really well.
Electron rocket.
Yeah, and it's awesome. That's the 13th launch. Bad luck.
Yes,
they'll be back.
13th launch. Yeah.
And New Zealand rocket fails. That was the headline here. Like, oh yeah, where's your rocket?
Bloody negative, isn't it? It's always. I feel like saying to the journalist, "You try making a frickin' rocket."
Well, Australia's a little bit bent out of shape that they haven't. And
so that's all about.
They might in 10 years. There's a Queensland company trying to do basically the same thing, and they maybe in 10 years, but I don't know.
Australia would be an ideal country to launch rockets from, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, they didn't think of it, so they're going to just ignore the whole rocket thing now.
Yeah, right. I see Elon Musk, speaking of rockets, has endorsed Kanye West as a presidential candidate.
Seriously, I would.
Did you see him when he sat down with Trump, Kanye West?
That'd just be just mad awesomeness and crazy. That would be so much crazy. You just wouldn't know where to start.
I think I'm a fan of Kanye West, not his music, but just his stream of consciousness that comes out when he's
Yeah.
talking. It's incredible.
He's one of those guys. I don't know if he's meaning to be funny, but he's actually very funny.
And very successful. He's a billionaire.
He's done all right. Yeah.
Yeah, so knows what he's doing. So that's an interesting one. But Elon Musk says, I'll support you all the way.
Yeah, well, they're old mates, eh?
Old mates.
Old mates.
All right, so what are we looking out for? I wonder how long it'll be before we get, something about the Max.
Yeah, I reckon September.
And I was wondering, they're using the 7 Max as the sort of like the validation, certification aircraft. So that just applies to the 8 and 9 because there's huge difference in length.
No, I think the 9's going to have to. The 9 needs some extra stuff done to it, from my understanding. It's not going to be that straightforward. So I think all the flight testing is going to be done with the 7 and then the 9.
Right.
And it'll bracket the 8.
And I see BA got their 787-10 delivered to Heathrow. I saw Big Jet TV had footage of that. Good on you guys. Coming in. So that's the Dash 10's got what, the same range as the 9 or slightly lower?
I thought it was slightly lower, but they can do that. They can put an extra tank in it, and it sort of comes out at roughly the same. Isn't that how Air New Zealand are going to use the 10 to cross the Pacific? They've got extra fuel in it or something.
Do you think they'll take delivery of those aircraft?
Well, that's a whole other story. Yeah, maybe they won't. And I understand that modification was being put in for Air New Zealand. That's how they got that's how they won the contract.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the aircraft of the week, the Pilatus Pc-12. I think it's been around since, thank you, Jason, for suggesting that. We've often talked about this aircraft, and it wasn't too long ago that it actually ended up coming to New Zealand. Sounds Air's been operating, quite a few of them over the last, 5 or 6, 7 or so years. And big seller in the US, and massive capacity. It's one of the top choices of the Flying Doctor Service in Australia, and just an all-round incredible, capable machine, wouldn't you say, Mark?
It is. It's always been one of my favorites. Big turboprops. I don't know why there's not more of them. Like, I don't know why they don't strap a Hercules engine onto like a 737 size fuselage and fly that thing around, because that would be amazing. And as a regional airliner, I think it would be hard to beat. And for safety, I don't know, put a turbojet in the tail for when things, if they ever went wrong.
Right.
But that Pilatus has been hugely successful for Pilatus out of a little town called Stans in Switzerland. I've actually driven past it and looked at all the planes on the lineup over there. They sold a lot of them, as you say. They're out here. I mean, they fly over here quite regularly because I don't think the Queensland Flying Doctor Service has them. Every now and again, you do see one fly over, and it's generally a flying doctor from, I think, New South Wales or somewhere. They've largely, they've really taken the fight to the big King Air twins. Like it's if you compare it to a 350, a King Air 350, which I think of as quite a big aircraft. If you look at it in terms, if you match it up with it, and I've got some numbers here. So the Beechcraft King Air takes 8 people. The Pilatus takes 7 people. The King Air costs in US dollars 6.5, roughly. The Pilatus costs less than 5.
Wow.
The Pilatus needs less runway, like 1,000 feet less runway.
My golly.
The Pilatus can fly further with 4 passengers. It can fly nearly 1,500 nautical miles. The King Air can fly, actually the Pilatus can fly 1,600 nautical miles, and the King Air flies about 1,500.
Right.
The Beechcraft has a higher load capacity by about 200, maybe 300 pounds. And the King Air is 20 knots faster in the cruise. Right?
But $2 million difference in price. That's the big thing already.
And the long-range cruising speed of the Pilatus is 209, and the long-range cruising speed of the King Air is 234. So it's 25 knots in a day.
Yeah.
There's a lot more Pilatus or PC-12s out there.
Yes, like about 750 by the looks of that graph you got there, that pie chart.
Yeah. And I think this is a bit older, so they've moved on. If you look at the cost per hour, the Pilatus is significantly cheaper, $500 an hour cheaper to fly.
Almost half the price.
Well, yeah, a lot cheaper. The Pilatus got a bigger cabin.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slightly bigger. Here's the range, you see. So the similar ranges. Yeah.
You can go anywhere.
You can go anywhere. And if you look at the computer, or not the computer, if you look at the cockpit of the new, what's it called? The NGX or whatever. Oh man, it's pretty cool. It's a hella, and it comes with a cargo door, got a big cargo door.
Yep.
Oh, it's a spectacular. There's the cargo door there. It's the last window.
Yeah, look at
and
that.
Apparently you can fork a pallet into there.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it gets up high too, doesn't it? Like mid-20s, even higher.
Well, every now and again I put flight radar on, and you filter it, and you filter out just to watch the PC-12s. Yeah, and they're zipping across the central Australia at 26,000 feet and 250 knots if they've got a bit of a wind behind them.
Wow.
Hugely successful aircraft, and it can land on moderately unprepared strips.
Yeah, I've seen footage of them landing on sort of next to rivers and things like that.
Yeah, and it's got the old Pratt & Whitney Canada.
Oh yeah, PG-6, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't break down.
Never.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing.
Which means you've got commonality with a lot of the other aircraft that airlines of that size will be using, like Cessna Caravans and things like that.
See, this is the figures. Here are the figures for the NGX. Takeoff distance 2,500 feet, maximum cruise speed 290 knots, range 1,800 miles, nautical miles.
So that's 300 miles an hour. That's getting along, boy.
That's 300 miles an hour and 1,800 nautical miles range. That's nearly 3,000 k's range. Well, it is 3,000 k's range.
So that's almost coast to coast, isn't it? By about 300 or 400 miles.
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah. Yeah, you might have
one stop. You're there, no problem.
Yeah, one stop in the middle.
Yeah.
An amazing aircraft, and I've looked at them for a long time.
Yeah.
And here here you can compare it with the jet, because they've got that jet as well, the PC-24.
Yeah.
But
that would have a lot of the sort of the legacy of the success of the PC-12 in there. They know how to make that sort of aircraft.
So let's go to Auckland, which I'll just put there.
Yeah.
And there you go. That's how far you could fly in a PC-12 with 2 pilots and maximum cruise. You'd still make Australia.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah. And
probably they do.
2,980 kilometers. And if you go long range cruise and 1 pilot,
even further,
2 pilots, 3,400.
You get to Adelaide. You get to Adelaide.
Just, yeah.
Just.
But yeah. You would. I mean, you'd certainly get, you'd get all the way up the east coast of I mean, geez, I wonder how many. So let's say, okay, we've flown to Australia. I don't know. I think Townsville might be about there.
Yeah.
Land there. Yeah, 2 stops and you're in Singapore.
Gee. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you're getting along at a speed too that's going to get you there.
Yeah, land somewhere there. Fly to Perth. Yeah, Indonesia.
Wow.
Darwin's about there.
Yeah,
interesting. It's a very capable aircraft, and that's of course the jet. Jet has slightly more range, but not a lot more range.
Right.
No, a fantastic airplane, and very impressive when you get up to them. They are big.
Yeah, they are. I've stood. I haven't flown on one, but I've stood next to a few at air shows and stuff. And yeah, they are. They've got size. They've really got some size.
And while I'm unlikely to ever to be able to afford a PC-12, and I'm as unlikely to own this thing. This is the new airplane from Diamond. They make the 42 twin and everything. Let's give this chance to open. This is the Diamond DA50 retractable.
Boy, look at
And that's a
that.
5-seater carbon fiber GA aircraft. But what's cool about it, the engine up here, it's a Continental V6 diesel, runs on Jet A1.
Because they've done diesel before Diamond, haven't they?
They have, and they basically Austro Daimler. Yeah, they bought the company that made the engine that their aircraft was reliant on. In the beginning, they had a lot of problems with the reduction gear, and it looks like they've decided not to continue to higher power outputs. In the meantime, Continental have come along with their diesel 3-liter diesel engine, 300 horsepower, and I mean this plane's figures 181 knots, 20,000 feet, carries 600 kgs, and looks pretty useful.
So it must be. It must be pressurized, huh?
No, it's not. You'd have to have an oxygen system. Yeah.
So that's diesel. I remember going once at Oshkosh to look at a manufacturer had made an engine or converted the engine of a Cessna to run on Jet A1.
Yes, I mean, so Continental had some 4-cylinder engines that are diesel engines, and Telit made diesel engines. Austro Daimler, there's been a number of diesel engines around for some years, but they've never really taken off. Partly because of the conservatism when it comes to certification, this and that. But now and these are relatively high power outputs. So this is the Continental engine, 300 horsepower, and the Russians, for their Yak 152 trainer, they developed that V12 diesel engine, and that's been certified in Europe because the engine's built in Germany, and that's also being used in some utility aircraft. There's a sort of a scaled down Twin Otter, a 9 to 14 seater, that has got 2 of these 500 horsepower V12s on the wing, which looks like it might be interesting should it ever get off the ground. And that Yak 152, I mean, you watch the videos, it sounds awesome. I mean, it's got a V12 diesel, so how can it not sound fantastic?
Did the German Air Force, Luftwaffe, in the Second World War, they have diesel-powered aircraft?
Junkers had yes, and very interesting engines they were too. They were, I guess I'd call it an absolute boxer engine. It had 2 crankshafts and the pistons met in the middle.
Wow. Okay.
So it didn't have a cylinder head. It had I guess the crankshaft was a cylinder bottom, and the pistons met and they compressed and they squirted diesel in, and that's how they were. Incredibly heavy.
Yeah.
But incredible long range. You know,
Right.
22-hour missions they had them in a couple of seaplanes. Yeah.
Crikey. Okay. Well,
but you look at this plane. This plane zipping along at you won't say it'll be cruising at 300 kilometers an hour, using 34 liters. So it's doing 10 liters per 100 kilometers.
Wow.
That's right up there with it's better than a Land Cruiser 200.
Which doesn't fly. It looks pretty slick, I got to say. It looks pretty slick. 5-seater too, eh? 5.
And actually, they're doing an enhanced weight version. It'll be a 7-seater, so you'll have 1, 2 in the front, 1, 2, 3 facing front, and then another 2 facing back with their feet going down into the tail of the plane.
Right. Wow.
That'll be a 7-seater, yeah.
Very cool, mate. Well, that was we found that out through finding out about the PC-12. So, well, that looks like something that will sell to me.
Well, it's just because I have to look at alternatives because I doubt I'll ever be able to afford a PC-12. But if I had the money, that'd be my go-to plane.
Wow. Okay. So thank you, Jason, for Jason Toy for suggesting that to be our aircraft of the week. And I did find some quite good, where is it? Footage of, I think I've closed the page of the PC-12 online. There's some good air-to-air and everything like that. That jet looks pretty good, by the way. It looks really good. There's some footage of that doing landings on unprepared strips. It's pretty capable.
Well, I think the Royal Flying Doctor Service has got a couple as well here.
Oh, the jets?
Yeah, the PC-24 as well. I think they have.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give us a good, click on the cabin, the cockpit. We want to see the cockpit. And this is all highly digital, with synthetic vision and all that.
Oh, it's the business.
Look
In
at
fact,
that.
I was watching a video. If anyone's interested, the channel's called Flying Doodles, and
Yeah.
he goes to airports, and people invite him along. He's a pilot. He's an ex-business jet pilot who I think had a brain tumor, and he lost his license. And he's
Mm.
recovered and everything, but he hasn't got his license back yet. And I think he says it's going to be some years until he can get it back. He's got to prove these in complete remission and everything. So in the meantime, what he does is he runs a channel called Sailing Doodles and Flying Doodles, and he does
Right.
yachts and he does planes. But he went down to they're in Texas, and he spoke to this guy who's got an absolutely immaculate. It's like a 1965 um, Beach Bonanza
Oh yeah.
V-tail.
Yeah.
And it's original. This thing, the paint job, everything's absolutely original, except the cockpit, right? And he's kept it remarkably period, but he has very, I'd say, tastefully incorporated all the latest gear into this cockpit. And it's basically like it'd be like flying this thing. It is completely automatic, altitude hold, throttle, every auto throttle.
Wow.
Everything. He can fly this thing from the Garmin panel. Tap 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 tap
Gee.
tap, and it'll establish the approach, and it's actually really, really cool. And I think it's really nice what he's done. Flying Doodles, Detail Bonanza, a good video to watch.
And that's a very cool cockpit, very cool plane. And for Kiwis, you want to get a flight in one, book Sounds Air. I think to Hokitika, or the West Coast anyway, and I think they're going to Taupo too, weren't they, with the PC-12? There you go. Look at that. Yes, the digitization of everything just now with the the overlaid virtual synthetic vision over the instruments, over the real world. It's just incredible.
It is.
Yeah, looks pretty cool. Okay,
Looks
so
like
that's
even
our.
looks like even the backup instrument's electronic, hey?
Oh yeah, well they all are now. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But I think they have to be separate and fed from their
Yeah.
own inputs. Yeah, but there you go. Very integrated. Nice one. Thanks for suggesting that, Jason, and good to have a look around there on those specs and those images. Before we go, just a bit of Warbirds news. Not often we do Warbirds, but do you remember the last Warbirds over Wanaka? That yak came in to land on the grass part of the runway, and someone left two cherry pickers there, and it wiped out the right wing. Do you remember that? Well, that's in court now, and the pilot Arthur Dovey escaped unharmed. He's been in the High Court in Wellington today, and his lawyer said that his pilot wasn't at fault in the crash. They're saying it's an accident caused by systemic failures, and he quoted a Civil Aviation Authority report on the case, a textbook example of an organizational accident. Remember in Reggie Perrin, the guy always used to say, cock up on the catering front, Reggie. Well,
Yeah.
sort of like that. Anyway, the damage is hundreds of thousands. It's a World War II Yak 3, and I think he wants them to pay for it. Fair enough.
Do you remember? I don't know if he was big in New Zealand, but he's a Kiwi and he's big over here. A guy called John Clark.
Yeah, John Clark. Yeah.
Satirist, right?
John Clark, Fred Dagg. Yeah, he famous,
Yes,
mate. Famous.
Yes. But he was huge. He's huge over here as well, right?
Well, he was because he's dead now.
Yeah, no, he died. And there was a show on last
Brian
night.
Dorr was his partner.
Oh yeah. The show they run a TV show here, and it's a rerun. It's called The Games.
Oh yeah, The Games. John Clark was talking about the 100 meters, eh?
Well, yeah, they've got a budget shortfall, right, for the planning of the games.
Yeah,
the Sydney Olympics, right? And there's a budget shortfall, and they meet at this hotel. And the head of the Olympic Committee, the Australian Olympic Committee, saying to John, mate, I don't know what we're going to do. We've got to cut this budget. And then the waiter comes and says, who's having the lobster? And he puts the lobster down. And what are you having? Oh, I'm having the salad with Tibetan yak cheese. Oh, okay. And which bottle of Grange would you like? The 88 or and they're just going, we don't know how we can save money.
Oh, no.
Would sir like some port? Yes, just leave the bottle.
nothing we could possibly do to help either.
It's just so funny. No, you should watch it. The game. If I don't know if
No,
they show it.
I remember watching it back in the day. There was another funny scene in one of the programs where he comes in and they're sitting there with the people who are putting the tracks in. He said, "We've got a slight problem." I'm going off my memory, but they measured the 100-meter sprint track up, and he says, "How long is the 100-meter sprint track, do you think?" He goes, "Oh," the guy goes, "Oh, about 100 meters." He goes, "No, actually, it's 99 or 97 point or 95 or something. Did you actually measure it?" So, uh,
Yeah.
anyway, it very well highlighted those sorts of.
He's very funny. I like listening on YouTube. I sometimes listen to his old radio pieces where he'd pretend to be like the Minister of the Environment.
Well, that's where they have the ship, the bow falls off, and he says,
Oh my God, that's funny.
He says, "What about the environment?" He says, "We've towed it away from out of the environment. We've put it out of the environment." Anyway,
yeah, I know he was pretty funny.
But I know that he didn't come back to New Zealand much because he was, I think, very afraid of flying. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Weird.
Well, all right, from Palmerston North, John Clark. All right.
Yes, he was. Yes.
I think that's that old joke. What's the best thing to come out of Palmerston North?
And what would that be, Paul?
The road to Wellington. Well, it would be the road to Boxton.
Yes.
Or where else? Woodville.
Yeah, Woodville on the other side. Yeah.
I heard a funny joke in a pub once. This stand-up comedian was there, and he was just riffing, and he says, I got some Woodville jokes for you. Might have been in Palmerston North, actually. I used to work there. And one of them was, I saw a guy walking down the street in Woodville, the main street of Woodville, the other day. He said he had one jandal on. I said, "Hey, mate, you've lost your jandal." He said, "No, I've just found this one."
Oh, yeah.
It's an oldie and a goodie.
Yeah.
Anyway, and another one about being stuck on a roundabout because the indicator was stuck on or something. Anyway, I don't mean that about Palmerston North. I spent a year and a bit in Palmerston North, and it was a fantastic time. So,
well done. Good recovery there, Paul. Good recovery.
Station 2ZA back in the day. So that's it for this week. And you've got Paul Brennan in the bunker in Auckland and Mutton
Oaks on the side of the road somewhere in Roma.
With a full moon behind you, mate.
Or in front of me now, but yeah.
Oh, that must be a street light then.
Yeah, that would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could have just played along with that.
I could have, but no.
So we'll see you again real soon.
Yes, see you later.